Hello everybody, this is your professor from your Java programming class. This is your final lecture in polymorphism where I would go over the code using the abstract class and interfaces that is discussed in the book. Before we start, I just wanted to point out a few things. I have been mixing my lectures both with Eclipse and NetBeans, and in this one I'm using NetBeans, but you might also see some of the other ones that are created in Eclipse. Before I start getting into the book example, let's look into another very simple program which uses the abstract class. So here is an abstract class where I am saying public class BAC extends bank, okay, and this is my method. Now as you can see over here, this is not an abstract class, okay, this is an extension. So let's look at the abstract class first, and your abstract class over here is your bank, okay, and right now this is going to be extended by BAC. I will also have an extension of another one which is the Wells Fargo, so I'm calling it WFG, and only thing I'm doing over here is in my bank I am writing a method, okay, and then I'm going to incorporate according to my need this method into individual banks. That's why I'm saying this is my BAC, which is extending my bank, and this is my Wells Fargo, which is extending my bank, and the only thing I'm doing over here is saying this is going to be returning an interest rate. And then I have a credit union. This is also extending my bank, okay, and now I create this bank rate where this is my public class bank rate. I have a main method. I define a bank called B, and then I assign B, this is my object, to my Bank of America, my Wells Fargo, and my credit union. And every time I attach it, remember this is the same object, okay, every time I call in the get rate of interest, it actually associates with the right interest rate. So for Bank of America, it is going to be the interest rate for the Bank of America. For the Wells Fargo, again same object, but it's going to be referred to as the rate of interest for that. And I can compile this by just clicking on this one and right clicking, run file, and now it says my Bank of America is 0.15, my Wells Fargo is 0.3, and my rate of interest over here is 1.7. And of course, if you want to verify, let's just go verify just one, which is my credit union, which is 1.7, right? So a simple example over here which shows you the abstract class implementation. So let's take a look at the example that we have seen in the book, and let's take a look at, first of all, the interface. Remember, in my interface I only have abstract methods. So very simple, this is my interface payable and this is my abstract double get payable amount. So this payable is now going to be used or extended into more classes. All right, so let's look into my invoice. So in my invoice I'm implementing my interface payable, okay. So when I implement my interface payable, basically this abstract method that I have is going to be used, get payable amount. So let's now look into the invoice, the class invoice. Of course you have your instance variables. These are your part number, part description, quantity, price per item. Now these are all private, final, double. Then you have a constructor, okay, this is my class, so I have a constructor, and it's going to pass in part number, part description, quantity, and price per item. And these are the if statements, basically checking to make sure that the quantity is not negative, the price per item is not negative. Okay, and this is something that we have seen earlier as well. So these are my conditions. If these things are true, then I'm going to throw this illegal argument exception. Otherwise, I'm going to use all the values that I am actually accepting from the constructor and assign them into these part number, part description. Then I have my part number, returning part number. These are my get set values or get set methods: get part number, get part description, get quantity, get price per item. Okay, and then I have a toString method, basically formatting the part number, part description, quantity, and everything. And then I have a double payment, get payment amount. Now remember, this is the part that I have, this was my in my payable. Okay, this get payment amount, this is nothing, it does not have a body. Okay, this is an abstract method, but in my invoice I actually create my payable amount, which is my get my quantity times price per item. Let's look into the employee. So this is now an abstract class. Okay, so the abstract class can have constructor, and it can have regular methods, and also, but it also needs to have at least one abstract method. Okay, so here we go. First of all, here is my abstract method right here. Okay, because I need to at least have one abstract method. Okay, now let's look into more of the employee. So again, in this abstract class employee, I'm still going to use my payable. Okay, and what is in my payable? This payment amount. Okay, so in this payment amount, I'm going to call in my earnings. Okay, this is my abstract method, and depending upon where I'm using it, I'm going to change my earnings. Okay, so this is an abstract method. Now it also has some of the concrete methods, but it definitely has an abstract method. So here is my abstract class employee with my variables over here. Remember, these are all final variables, and this is my constructor, and in this one I pass first name, last name, and social security number. So that's how I get assigned. And then I have my first name, get last name, get social security number, and only thing it's doing is returning the values. Okay, toString method, here is my abstract method, and then I'm using this get payment, which is actually been implemented from this payable, and inside the body is return earnings. Okay, so this earnings is going to be defined somewhere else. It's just an abstract method. Now let's look into the salaried employee. Okay, so this is my salaried employee. This is a class which extends employee. Okay, so remember, employee is my abstract class, so my salaried employee is extending my employee. Okay, so salaried employee now has a constructor. Again, first name, last name, social security, weekly salary. Now this is where I actually call the parent. Remember, when I say extend, I'm calling my parent, which is my employee. So if I go to my employee, here is the constructor that I'm calling over here. So I said super, first name, last name, and social security. So if you go back over here, this is how I get my first name, last name, and my social security. But in this salaried employee, I even added not only the three, first name, last name, and social security, but then I also have weekly salary. Okay, so I would get the first three from the super, and then I would again run some of the condition. Weekly salary, I cannot have a weekly salary of negative value. And then if the condition is true over here, if somebody tries to input a weekly salary of negative value, I would come back and give them an exception and say, no, it cannot be a negative salary. And then I would just take the weekly salary and assign it to my weekly salary that I have created over here. Now I have set weekly salary, and again, my weekly salary, I'm going to take a double value, but it cannot be a negative, and then assign that weekly salary. Okay, so here is my public double get weekly salary. It's going to return my salary. Now this is where I have my earnings, and my earnings is going to be nothing but my weekly salary. Okay, so this is my weekly salary. Remember, in my previous one, in the employee, I had return earnings. Okay, so this is where I'm actually defining this weekly salary. Okay, and then I have a string method. Now, culminating in everything is my final test, and this is my public class test where I have my main method. But look now what I have done. I have created some object, and these are payable objects. So look at this payable. This is my payable interface. Okay, so in my payable objects, I have new invoice. So here is this new invoice. So this is the public class invoice which implements payable. So I have my invoice where I pass in this 1, 2, 3, 4 things. So if I go back to my invoice, part number, part description, quantity, and price per item. All right. So these are the things that I just passed. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I created 2 of those things. Okay. And then I also created salaried employee. Okay. Now if I go back to my salaried employee, remember my first name, last name, social security, and double weekly salary. Then I have to get the first 3 from this initial method inherited. Okay. Super, from my employee. Okay, so that's why I pass these 4 things in here. So Smith, my social security, and the value, and then that's in my payable object with the values. And then I'm just doing a print line and writing a very simple for statement where every single payable object that I just created, I'm assigning it to the current payable and then running it and giving all the details. So if I come back over here, this payable, I'm going to right click and I'm going to run the file, and now I say my salaried employee is my John Smith, my social security number, my weekly salary. So if I actually come up over here, so invoices and employees processed polymorphically. Here is my invoice with my part number, quantity, price per item, payment due, the second invoice, and then I have my salaried employee and my 2 of my salaried employees. So these are my first 2, which gives me the invoice, and this is my salaried employee. So this is how we are showing the implementation of polymorphism, where it's a combination of abstract classes, interfaces, and then creating a test class where I am now creating this object where I create something with an invoice, and then I also create something over here. Okay, so if I run it again, so here are my values. So this is my payment due. Okay, this is how I'm calculating it. Payment due, it's basically multiplying the quantity with the price per item. And then you have your weekly salary over here and weekly salary over here. All right. So that should take care of the concepts that we have discussed in this chapter. Good luck.